How many from Oklahoma? How many of you? Okay. How many of you are familiar with Cherokee Nation? Okay. If you go back in the rural areas, and let me say, and I know different people have different way of. To me, a rural area is out in the country, in the back in the woods. If you go back into those communities, they still have a lot of the Gadugi where people help each other, and but then if you go into the more like town, cities and stuff, I think they have that, but it's different kind of different type of relationship they have. In the communities that we work, where this was real successful, was mostly in the full-blood communities, because that's Gadugi, the Gadi that Stella. Let's everybody help each other. That's what we believe in. And that was, in many projects we did, water, housing and all, it was very well received. That's how we were able to be successful in that. But this Bell project, it created a movement from one community to another. And there was times when we had about a dozen projects going, whether it be self-help housing, water lines, community buildings, or programs, or what. And but as we travel in other parts of the country to native communities, they also had the same thing. We've had people come up to us and say, you know, we used to have that, we've lost it. We need to bring it back, and we hope this is not the end, but the beginning of this philosophy or concept that we have, that we start working together, helping each other again. So.
And one other possible element, if I heard your question right, is if you buy the DVD and after the world's longest credits, as you've seen, we then have the very end part is Wilma talking. And Wilma said, I asked her why she agreed to do this film, because she didn't want a film about her. And she wanted it about community. And she said, far better than I will, at the end of she says, I want people everywhere to see this film and think, if they can do it, we can do it, whatever the it is. So, and as we've traveled, it has, communities, Indian and non, have responded really positively and been reminded of what they can do. The question was, if the government has given Indians the control over the water, and the government has given farmers control over the land, how do you reconcile the conflict there? Is that accurate?
And how can people help to make that more complementary to each other?
And how can that be more complementary to each other?
I think the government, with all due respect to the government, I think that, to me, the tribes, the Cherokee Nation owns the water. But then when you actually get down to it and saying, okay, now we're going to do what we want to do with the water, there's always somebody else comes in and say, hey, wait, it's not that way, because they say the state owns the water. And so we really are regulated in terms of how we can use the water, utilize it. Now, there's always those regulations or policies or rules in place. It hinders you from doing that. Of course, you know, there's all kinds of different branches of government. That there's environmental people that are involved in it too, and I think that's where a lot of the disagreements come in. You know, the up north, the ranchers, the farmers, and then the tribes were all at odds at one time. They were not very comfortable with the tribes having ownership of the water, had control. But when all this pollution started, the contamination of water with coal mining or whatever that was doing, and that's where the ranchers and the farmers banded together and started working closer together with that water situation. So now they have a pretty good system in place. But still yet, water is such an issue, and I don't think people realize how bad it is. The water, especially the pollution, the contamination, and also the shortage in a lot of areas. So they have to really be careful. And when you start cutting people back, when you start saying you can't do this, this, and that, when you say, well, the water's free, it's supposed to be ours, I think that's where it gets into politics. You know, so that's something that it's inedible. But that's just the way it is. I think people can work together, compromise in a good, positive way, can really find a good solution to it. But water is really an issue. So
I'll take it one step beyond that you did, which is we showed the film at the Toho no Odom in Arizona, and the tribe, the Indian nation, was fighting for water, and Arizona was trying to stop them from getting it, but they finally reached an agreement. But some of the tribal members refused to sign and fought it because what the Arizona Water District was going to do was give the water to the Toho no Odom tribe, which would then control how it was used, whereas the traditional Toho no Odom tribal members might have no access to it. And so the current vice chair of that tribe, his mother fought for 25 years to assure that the tribal members would get their traditional farming water, and they succeeded. And they have a phenomenal water youth summit, or youth water summit every year, and educate the youth.
There's always a battle going on with tribes and the government about water rights. See, the government, a lot of people say, well, the tribes have sovereignty, but also in the legislation it says that they have Congress has a preliminary clause in there that says anytime that we say you don't have sovereignty, all we gotta do is stroke of the pen, you don't have it, you know, so that's just something we have.
So to see that there are Native Americans who are lacking those fundamental resources, what is all the revenue going from things like the casinos and stuff like that? And how is that not helping Native American people if that's what it's for?
It all depends on the leadership. And this leadership we talked about in the film was during Wilma Mankill's era. And Wilma believed in the people. And we talked about sometimes where we would say that leaders sometimes they build huge buildings, huge construction, huge projects, whatever, and because that's their landmark, and that's what they look to. But for us, we look to the people. In order to build a strong nation, you have to build up the people. You have to build strong communities to build a strong nation. Now the revenues coming in from the casinos, it again goes back to leadership. How are you going to use it? And the present leadership is building more casinos. And I like to go to casinos, but I'm learning that's not a good place to be because you never win. It used to be. But you see people coming in, and then it's sort of, it bothers me when I see, and I don't go there a whole lot, but you can tell that people that they really can't afford it will go, but they can. And one person put it to me, and I told him, I said, you know, I really hate to see those people coming in, and because I know they can't really afford it, and then they walk out being a loser, you know. I'll walk out being a loser too. I don't like it either, you know. So, but like I said, I don't go that much anymore. But that's something that they get caught in, but I think that's up to the individual to choose what they want to do. But this one person said, well, you know what? He said, a lot of people, older people, stay home, and they get lonesome. They need something to do. And the way he put it, it made it okay for me to believe that, because he said, that's entertainment. You don't know how much money this means. They might be betting a penny or nickel or whatever. He said, but they get out of the houses and that. But on the other side is there's a lot of money that goes out to the people. And again, I would like to see that money going back into the communities. Well, what we did with volunteer labor, we built community buildings, volunteers. We brought in the language program. We brought in nutrition program, elderly programs, all kinds of programs. But it was the people that said, this is what we want. And that's how Wilma delegated the funds to them, gave them money to bring those programs into that area. And it really does strengthen the communities, and they take leadership. But you create that leadership, then a lot of times politicians don't like it. Then they say the politicians, hey, they're getting too strong for us, and we got elections coming up. There's all kinds of things that happen, you know. So again, it just goes back to the leadership, how they want it, you know. But I would rather be known for the Cherokee Nation as a nation of people who have strong communities, instead of when a lot of tribes, when you talk about tribes, they say, oh man, they got great casinos. I don't want to be known for my casinos. I want to be known for who we are as strong nations, smart people, you know, that are progressive type people as a nation, you know.
And when Wilma was chief, there weren't casinos. So the economic development that she did was exactly the kind that you see here. And you raised an important point when you said, I had no idea that this was such a problem. Native, and I'm not Native, I'm your average white girl, but I've spent the last 30 years, you know, around Wilma and Charlie and the Cherokee and other Native communities. And the fact is, the poverty rate is off the charts. Black Lives Matter has brought to the attention the killing of black, usually men, by police. The rate is the same for Native people, and nobody's heard about that. So many of the problems within the Native communities are invisible to the non-Native world. And this is a way of, Wilma wanted this movie because she felt that public perception drives public policy, and that most policymakers have no sense of contemporary Indians. You know, people know about ancient slaughters, maybe the Trail of Tears, and now it's become, and Wilma. And there are a number of wonderful leaders, both men and women, but the problems are enormous and deserve our attention.
One of the things that we want to do was that, as you can see, it's very apparent that people are able to solve their own problems. You know, the poor communities, they work together, come together, bond together, and have a goal, and they can work together. I mean, I can tell you all kinds of stories. That was 18-mile water line. And the next one we did was 7 miles, went to 29 miles, 33 miles, all the projects. The last one I was working on was a 66-mile water line with volunteer labor.
I was just wondering if you think that there's a lot of Cherokee youth that are following in the vein of Wilma. Like, do you think that there is youth that have that same vigor and intensity as far as wanting to actually help the people of the Cherokee Nation instead of just create revenue?
I think there are, you know, there's
Good
a lady that Wilma mentored, went to Washington and came back, and now is in business. And other places you go to, you see tribal members, and they really respect Wilma. I said Wilma's the one that also inspired me to be where I am. And but Wilma was the type of lady that would really take time. She was a people person, actually cared about people, and as a leader, which is, I mean, people have said, you know, we may be up in Washington, maybe a meeting with the president, and then the next day we're in some rural, poor community having a meal with the full-bloods or someone that's needing some help and those kinds of, that's something that was very apparent for her. But she really cared about people, and she spent time, believed in people, and she knew how important it was to give those people support, you know, that really may be from broken homes or may have drug problems, alcohol problems. They were still important because she would say these are somebody's brother, somebody's sister, somebody's their parents, and this and that. You know, that's the kind of attitude she had. And so there are a lot of people that I ran into that have really been successful because I mean, we get letters sometime and saying thank you, Wilma, and for inspiring me and those kinds of things. But also political leaders, tribal leaders said the same thing.
And I'd like to answer that beyond the Cherokee Nation and what she did by being a visible woman leader was not just Cherokee youth, but youth in other Indian communities have used that as an inspiration, and there are some good women leaders and young men leaders as well.
I wrote down one of the quotes when she was writing in her diary, and I really took it to heart what she said, helping people help themselves and showing them the way. And I can understand the frustration of promises, you know, what a setback it was. Nobody wanted to come together because, hey, you know, we've been promised this for so long. And I admire you and your wife for getting out there and, you know, being in the forefront and showing them, hey, I'm doing it. I'm not just telling you about it. I'm out there working too, you know. And I have seen cases where the casinos did help the community. There's a small tribe, Sequan, in San Diego. There's also, they're not of the Cherokee Nation, but their tribe. And then one in Central California also, where the homes were in disrepair and there were a lot of internal problems in the community and stuff. And the casino, you could go there like 5 years later after the casino opened, new homes were being built, fire stations, schools, different programs like you were talking about. Yes. And I can understand how some of those funds may, because of politics, be misrouted, you know, but I have seen quite a few instances where it did go totally back to the community, and it gave them a sense of self-worth and pride, and I think that that draws them more together also. You know, so I just wanted to say that was a wonderful film. I was like wiping my eyes a couple of times. It was good.
And you laughed too.
Yes,
Okay.
I did. I laughed so hard when she told that guy, "You are fired." I was like, oh yeah. I have Cherokee ancestry on my dad's side. Unfortunately, I've never known that much about my ancestry because my grandmother's passed. My great-grandmother was half, and you know, I really don't know much about my ancestry, but
I think any leadership you get into is, no matter who's in there, there's going to be criticism. There's going to be some, you know, that's just politics. And I think once we realize that, one needs to realize that, and they're not going to please everybody. You know, everybody has different ideas. If we did, then we'd be bouncing over the wall trying to figure out which way do we go. You know, so. But there are some great people, good people that's involved with the nation, and they're hard workers, and, you know, so.
that was
but
a
always
wonderful
felt like
film.
too that it's the people that make the nation.
And by the way, with all this discussion about inspiring people to do what they can when they don't think they can, a little context. Charlie and I had never made a movie before, either one of us. You know, And it just took sort of not giving up. So,
I think
yes.
Sarah, but I never told her.
Well, y'all did a great job.
Oh,
That was really,
when the maybe two last.
I was curious, whenever Wilma said that she worked in San Francisco in the Indian movement, was she at all involved with like the American Indian movement, particularly Leonard Peltier?
Very involved. She was involved with the Alcatraz and then also the Black Panthers. And it was interesting because we were riding down the road one day and going to another community meeting in a Kenwood area, another poor area. And she said, Ross Swimmer has asked me to run for office. And she said, what do you think about that? I was never involved in politics. I didn't even know anything about it. All I knew, I just worked, you know. And she said, so what do you think about me getting involved in politics? And I said, well, like, fine, if you want to. She said, what do you know about politics? I said, nothing. She said, would you support me? I said, what would you do? She said, well, I would run for office. And she said, would you go out and speak for me? I said, no, because I'm not a good speaker. Talk very good in front of people. I said, she said, well, you're well liked, you're well known, I'd like for you to support me. She said, would you support me? And I said, I guess I would, you know. And but that was one thing that she said was, Charlie, she said, if people knew about my past, she said, I don't think they'd like it. I said, oh, huh, sort of kind of rob a bank or something, you know. I said, huh. I said, well, I don't know. She said, you know anything about the American Indian movement? AIM. I said, oh yeah. I said, I know about that. She said, I was very active in California. I was part of the, involved with the occupation of Alcatraz. I said, really? I said, wow, people would like that. I said, because they want somebody to fight for them. She said, well, the other thing was, she said, I was involved with the Black Panthers. I said, well, that even makes it better. And so that's how, and she was good friends with Angela Davis, and I know they communicated, and along with some of the other activists early on. And but she was involved, very involved in AIM movement.
And in honor of the day, I will announce that there is a documentary that Charlie and I helped produce that will be on PBS this November, that's about Wilma. And so it goes into all of the California, the AIM, the Black Panther, and the Black Panthers at that point were noted for their feeding program and, you know, their school activities, you know.
I
So-
guess that's what I'm saying is even like political prisoners like Leonard Peltier, once you get to a certain level, as you were met with opposition from the deputy chief back then, as you rise
I
through
don't
the
think her
ranks.
position had any limits as far as helping people. She was involved with Leonard Peltier too, you know, and but it's just there was no limits for her when it come to people. And one of the times reminds me that she was asked to give a speech in Atlanta. What is that?
Right, right,
Martin
at
Luther King.
the Baptist, Ebenezer Baptist. Church.
Ebenezer Baptist, and she was asked to give a speech there. And I know that we were getting ready to leave, and there's a group of people came up, and we were happy and getting ready to leave. And she said, "Where y'all going?" I said, "We're going to Alabama." Is it Alabama?
Which
We're
one?
to church.
To Martin Luther King's
Yeah.
church?
Yeah,
That's
so-
Atlanta.
Atlanta, that's where we're going. And I know one of the ladies said she was going to give a speech at the church. She said, "What are you going there for?" She said, "That's not your race. That's not your people." And she just politely, as calm as could be, turned around and looked at her. She said, "They are of my race because they're of the human race." I thought,
That was awesome. That's
but
awesome.
we did go there, and she gave a great speech. Matter of fact, I got to march along Evander Holyfield that day. We did a great march.
Do you know of any documentaries, books, or any other resources that also cover information on either the Bell water source or any other community resources that have happened either in Oklahoma or even just in general over across North America?
Okay, good question. I am delighted to say that there is a wonderful documentary on LaDonna Harris, who, Yola, Arkansas, they were Oklahoma. Fred Harris, who was the youngest senator ever
Comanches.
from Oklahoma, and LaDonna was his wife, who's Comanche. And it's called Indian 101. And it's relevant because, and this was back when Kennedy and Johnson were presidents, and they had her do Indian 101 for every new Congress that came in because they didn't know anything at all about Indians. And so each time she would educate them about Native people, which would be a really good thing to reinstitute, by the way. But that's, and so you've got two women's stories about that would be really valuable.
Do you all have any insight or anything you can say about the younger children kind of taking up that, being proud again and trying to spread the knowledge and the things that we're facing?
Seventh generation.
Mm-hmm.
But more specifically, you were asking about youth embracing, is that the question? Youth
Because
embracing their native,
Right.
And
The
spreading
Sioux,
that.
they have this legend of the seventh generation are the ones that are going to actually take up the pride again and bring us back to a strong nation again as a Native people.
Yeah, actually,
Talk to the elders.
the Iroquois nation has that seventh generation. And I've worked with them, and matter of fact, I worked with a group called Seventh Generation way back in the 80s with Wilma and some of the people like John Mohawk, Mike Marsh, some of them. We had an organization called Seventh Generation. But what they say is, and their philosophy is great, and they really teach a lot of traditional ways. And they said, when you make a decision, make sure you think 7 generations down the road before you make it. And that's a lot of thinking. So, but that's a good philosophy to have. And that's what they do. They consult with the elders, the leaders, the pot carriers, and all those people that when they make those decisions. And another prophecy would be in that when Wilma became in the office as a woman, we were sitting around and said, Wilma said something like, it really surprised me that I am leading the nation as a woman, Cherokee Nation, and Warren Lyons, who was in that movie, he's world known, and matter of fact, they'll send him to the UN to speak for the indigenous people, and he was an honor for him to agree for him to be my grandpa in the movie. But when Wilma said that, Warren jumped right in and said, Wilma, he said, that's the Iroquois prophecy, what's happening. He said, in our prophecy, he said, this is what we call a time of the butterfly. I love that sound, the time of the butterfly, because it is now time for women to come into leadership, and you just happen to be leading the way. And that's when you really notice a lot of women leaders came in from tribal leaders. Wilma sort of paved the way, but that was a prophecy they had. And so, but it's really, it's good if the young people can follow that philosophy, 7 generation, be active, get involved, but be taught in a good way. in a positive way for our people. And I get amused sometimes when I was working at the Nation, and they said, when I listened to the young people, they said, we're going to go out in the communities, we're going to go teach them about our tradition. And I'm saying, man, you got elders out there that knows the tradition. You should be listening to them. But it was good that they were taking that initiative and learning that too, you know. So, but there's a lot of knowledge out there that we could learn from the traditional people about the medicine, the beliefs, the stories, and all that. And so, but the seventh generation is a good philosophy to have. But I hope it's taught in a good way.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, one last.
How did you manage to cast this film? I'm just thinking of our current national conversation about Hollywood whitewashing, and this film is all Native American actors, and so many women actors as well. And I'm just wondering how you managed to cast this film with those ideas in mind and a film industry that prefers white people.
I'll start with some and then hand it over to Charlie. Number one, we raised the money. We filmed we controlled all of it and would not let go of that control. Number two, we did not ever audition anyone for an Indian role who could not prove their tribal affiliation. Now, you won't be surprised to know that people in Hollywood would say, you really need to see her. And I said, what tribe is she affiliated with? Well, she's so-and-so, but she can't prove it. I said, we're not auditioning. Just look at her. I said, number one, it's not fair to her. Number two, we do not want anyone out there talking about whether or not that person was really Indian or not Indian. Now, being slightly irreverent, I did think it was our opportunity to cast some Indian people as white people because they were, but Charlie wouldn't let me. And Charlie did the overwhelming amount of the casting, so.
But a lot of the auditions took place in LA, and then I don't know, I think there was 31 or 33 women that tried out for Wilma's part and 29 for my part, and then quite a few numbers for the other parts. And so they went through the process, and the finalists 7, we never did go to California, so we stayed here and was working, and the 7 finalists, they sent us videos. So we reviewed the videos in this large room, and so it was there was great actors and actors, and it was really hard just really seeing. I said, my role is to make sure that whoever we pick as Wilma has got to be good, or I'll get crucified. So there was 2 and really that stood out, and Kim was one, and the other was, I forgot, she was also in a lot of movies and TV series. And so, but I told them that we were running out of time, and I said, I'd like to see Kim. I'd like to visit with her. And when she came down, we talked and got to know her a little bit more. And so I went back and I said, I want to review those tapes again. So I looked at them again, and I believe in prayers. I believe in spirituality, man. I'm a great I believe in big time about prayers and praying about it. And so I chose Kim. I said, this is the lady that we would like to have. So, but I had to get the consensus to agree with me, and they all agreed that it would be the one. And when it came for Charlie, I told somebody, I told Kristina, when they asked him, there was a scene in there, the women would say, are you asking me for a date? So I said, I love it when they ask me for a date, all these women asking me for a date. Just joking around.
All these beautiful young women.
And then, and when we were reviewing this one, the casting agent said, Charlie, that Mo Brinkspring is sitting outside the door. And he came in all the way from Kansas City to meet you. And I said, yeah, right. Yeah, he just wants to make points, you know. And so I said, well, I'll talk to him later. So we got into a conversation, and then after a while, the lady said, Charlie, Mo's still outside waiting. Said, do you want to see him? Do you want to talk to him? And I said, well, yeah, let's go ahead and talk to him. Brought him in. And when they opened the door and he walked in, I just looked at him. I said, my God, that's Charlie Soap. And I teared up, and he teared up. And we just looked at each other. It was really kind of emotional at that time. And we just bonded like that. And we embraced and told him, I said, I'm glad you're here. We sat down, and there was about 8 or 10 people in that room. I mean, we talked about problems with youth, elder, all kinds of stuff. I mean, boy, that guy said, he's a good man. And we forgot about everybody else in the room. But I guess they were listening to us talk. And then he said, well, I got to go, Charlie. I got to drive all the way back to Kansas. And he said, I just want to come and meet you. Because I've kept up with you and Wilma since I was that high. He said, I just wanted to meet you in person and say what great job you all have done for our people, for Native people across the country. And we shook hands, and he walks out. And we were trying to talk, and I couldn't get my mind off of it. And I said, somebody call him, tell him to come back. That's who I want for Charlie. So they had a hard time getting him on the phone, and we finally reached him after we told him to come back, and we took him out to dinner, and that's when we told him he had to part with Charlie, and he was very happy. And I just thank the Lord that we made the right choice. You know, I think this movie's been very blessed. And and there's all kinds of great people in the community in Bell and who made this real. And there's so many stories I could tell you, very moving stories about people. And you talk about tearing up, man, I get choked up when I talk about some of the other people that's been involved, even the people in the movie industry, the people that came forward and wanted to be part of Wilma Mankiller's story. That says something. And then also when you go around the globe, we've been asked to go all around the world, and like Sweden, Holland, Spain, Italy, France, Greece, New Zealand,
Cuba.
Australia, even Cuba's asking us,
Brazil.
Nicaragua, all over, So Canada. I think we're probably going into Canada after some time here, but we've traveled a lot. We travel all times and talking about this, but she was quite a lady, a great leader, and a great woman leader, and also a great wife, great family person and all, but her heart was good. Her heart was in the right place. Even though she had a lot of health problems. Sometimes we get sick and don't feel good. We don't go to work, or we lay around. That's one thing Wilma Mankiller never did. I mean, she worked. She would be, because she had kidney failure, she would be vomiting in the office. She'd be in the meeting, she'd, excuse me, she'd go in the bathroom and come back and conduct business. It was hard to get sick around her,
It was.
I ain't wrong with you, Charlie. When look what she's going through, but she inspired a lot of people. And she was just all around person, cared about people. We need more of that, caring about each other, loving each other. I mean, really, truly respecting each other. We're all people, like God said. We're all the human race. We're all people. We need to work together. We need to help each other. That's the message she carried.
One other quick addition to that, even though I hate to follow on Charlie's poignant moment, but there were only a handful of professional actors in that film. There were maybe 5. All of the rest were members of the community or Oren Lyons, who Charlie chose for Grandpa, or Curly was our friend for 25 years who had known about this movie and wanted to play that role. And he's a neon artist and a musician, and
not an actor, because I bought him totally, completely.
no, none of them. And one last actor, the man who played the Medicine Man, is someone who, if you go on our website, there's a background video where you hear his voice, because he wouldn't allow us to film him. And then 5 years later, we're casting for this, and Charlie decided that Roger, his best friend, hog fry storytelling partner, would be perfect for it. And he agreed. And then about 10 days before we started filming, we thought, you think he'll really do it? I mean, he wouldn't let us film him before, will you? And he absolutely, obviously did it, and did a phenomenal job.
Knocked it out of the ballpark, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Said he knocked it out of the ballpark, didn't he?
And he passed away in November. And his family talked about how much this meant to him. And back at you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying late.